Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. I've talked numerous times on the channel about the different versions of HeroQuest, and one of the things I have mentioned is how different the European version feels compared to the North American version. The European version from 1989 harboured a sense of friendly competition. Sure, the heroes were working towards a common goal and fighting the same monsters, but they were also in a game of one-upmanship with each other. Every game was a race. Who could get the most loot? Who could find the mission objective? Who would survive? It's no mistake that spells could be hurled at fellow heroes, and the fact a hero could only pass through another hero with permission was absolutely intended to create situations where heroes could prevent their supposed allies from getting ahead of them and searching a treasure chest first. The tempo of the game was dictated by the people you played with. This is why HeroQuest needed no doom track or game clock. Heroes didn't dawdle because if they did, they were going to miss out on something. This is also why monsters were incredibly easy to kill, each having only a single body point, and why traps were so much more deadly. Nobody had time to search for them as they were too busy trying to get to the next door. And after the adventure, when heroes went shopping, stock was severely limited. You could only buy an item if the card for that item was available, and in most cases there was only one card. So you raced into danger, grabbed the loot, bought the equipment and then sold it to your friends at double the going rate. This was dungeon crawling with a Monopoly mindset. This was adventuring while trying to screw over your siblings or teaming up on mum and dad. Nowhere is that idea better demonstrated than in the first adventure the heroes go on, the maze. This adventure was actually genius, because not only did it ease heroes into the mechanisms of the game, but it also set the tone for the games to follow, and actually presented a scenario that was very obviously a race. In this adventure, the heroes don't start together on the stairwell. Instead, they each choose a corner of the board to start in. Again, a very clever idea because that setup feels much more like a traditional board game. And of course, it reinforces that idea of every hero being out for themselves. The idea of cooperating doesn't even enter your mind. If it did, you couldn't anyway because you aren't physically in the same part of the board. And then Morcar, that would be Zargon to viewers across the pond, reads out the mission objective. This will be your final test before you set forth. Be sure to use all the skills that you have been taught. You must attempt to find your way out. Several monsters have been placed in the maze. They will try to stop you, so take care. Whoever finds the way out first will be rewarded with 100 gold coins. This may be used to buy equipment for the adventures to come. So yeah, it's a race, a competition. You are playing for glory and cold hard cash. But I'm actually getting a little ahead of myself here. By the time the heroes play this introductory mission, they should, if they have been working through the rules book, have already kicked lumps out of each other. In the combat rules there is a section called the Arena. It instructs the players to place their heroes in the four corners of the large room on the board. Morcar then adds 5 goblins. What ensues is a fight to the death, every hero for himself. The winner is the last hero left alive. The purpose here is only to learn how to move and fight, but by the time you have finished this little tutorial, you are very much aware of the fact these heroes will punch each other's lights out if they have to. But anyway, back to the maze. This is a wonderful introduction to the game. It's an incredibly well thought out map. The heroes are in the four corners and the stairs out are in the large room in the middle. Each hero has a route to that center room, and each of those routes requires the heroes to find a secret door. You simply can't escape the dungeon without finding secret doors first, so the map encourages exploration, creating that need to balance moving quickly with stopping to search for the doors and treasure you need. Furthermore, there are only 6 monsters on the board, 1 along each of the heroes' routes, which can be avoided by taking the correct route, and 2 that are guarding the way into the final room. So this isn't really about fighting. It's about knowing when to pick a fight, when to keep moving, and when to hold back to let someone else deal with a threat for you. And of course, roll and move, a mechanism so many people dislike, works really well for that style of gameplay. You are racing the other players, and the vagaries of the dice will sometimes put you ahead and sometimes behind. Sometimes you will be so far ahead you feel you can risk stopping to search for treasure, other times you will have to forego that search because you need to catch up. It all just works. Beyond that starting scenario, the line between competition and cooperation becomes less defined. The heroes all end up lumped together and must work together at times, but the introduction to the game has already created a certain mindset, that idea of taking an opportunity when it's presented. For example, in the Legacy of the Orc Warlord quest, it is possible for one hero to take everyone else's stuff, and if they choose to, they can refuse to give it back. I think over time the game moved away from that idea, as the expansions came out. The dungeon design kit did away with the idea of limiting equipment based on the number of cards available, removing one of the big elements of competition, and harder missions leaned more into the idea of players working together, especially once they were facing the mighty foes of the Ogre Horde, which required a concerted effort to take down. But to begin with at least, heroes were friendly rivals, and the game embraced that idea. Things were different in North America. The maze was absent from the adventure book released there. Instead, they had a starting adventure called The Trial, something that was designed to stand as a single adventure that showcased exactly what the game was all about. It used almost every piece of furniture and every type of enemy. And it was a real trial, designed to be tough, and interestingly, designed to promote cooperation. Because in the North American edition of the game, cooperation was the key. The design moved away from that idea of friendly and sometimes unfriendly competition. Monsters had more body points, equipment from the armory wasn't limited by the number of cards. In fact, there were no cards, the armory was printed on the box insert. Heroes couldn't target each other with spells or block each other from moving, and Morcar, now Zargon, had more tricks up their sleeves such as chaos spells. It became much more about a group of heroes facing an evil overseer, adventurers versus a dungeon master. Here is the original italicized text from the North American version of The Trial. It makes no secret of the game's intent. "You have learned well, my friends. Now has come the time of your first trial. You must enter the catacombs which contain Felmarg's tomb. You must seek out and destroy Verag, a foul gargoyle who hides in the catacombs. This quest is not easy and you must work together in order to survive. This is your first step on the road to becoming true heroes. Tread carefully, my friends." Furthermore, additional notes read, "Zargon, you may tell everyone that there are no traps or secret doors in this first quest. However, you should also warn them that this is a tough adventure. It is meant to show the players that their chance of survival will depend on how well they can work together." And clearly, this is a better quest than the maze for this edition of the game. Just as the maze reinforced the idea of competition, the trial reinforced the idea of working together. And honestly, even so, many heroes would lose their lives on this challenging endeavour. But I think in some ways, the trial misses the point. There are no traps or secret doors in the whole dungeon. A core concept of the game is simply absent. In the maze, searching was essential, fighting was secondary. The mission wanted you to learn how to explore. In the trial, the mission wants you to fight. I think excising traps and secret doors from the introductory scenario shortchanges the players. They are missing out on a whole dimension of the experience. Because of that and the extreme difficulty, while the trial is naturally a better fit than the maze, I still don't consider it to be the best way to ease someone into HeroQuest. The rescue of Sir Ragnar feels like a better starting place. The mission encourages players to search, and it has a noble goal of rescuing someone, a goal that feels like it sets in motion larger events that continue to unfold as the campaign progresses. That, to me, leads to a more satisfying experience. But our story doesn't end there. In 1990, a second edition of HeroQuest was released in Europe. This is actually the version I own today. It made some minor changes, like adding new equipment that the wizard could buy to help him survive more often, and the rules were revised and reformatted to be slightly more robust. But the biggest change was the removal of the maze as the introductory quest. Instead, this version of the game had the introductory quest, The Trial, only not quite the trial North American audiences knew. And this, as far as I'm concerned, was a bad call, because the quest had all the problems we have already discussed and then added more. First of all, the trial was introduced as a cut-down tutorial. You were supposed to play it before introducing traps, secret doors, searching for treasure, or even casting spells. That's right, the rules book steps you through the concepts of movement and combat, and then it says play the trial. In effect, the trial replaces the magical arena that first taught heroes how to punch each other to bits. Now, instead, the heroes go into the trial and run around fighting monsters without knowing how to cast spells or search for anything. Half the core concepts of the game simply aren't used, and yet the trial is quite a long mission that takes a fair chunk of time to play through. Can you imagine being the wizard and taking on the challenges of the trial without even having a spell to your name? Overall, the trial simply isn't very interesting, and it does a pretty lousy job of teaching new heroes how to play the game because so many of the rules aren't introduced. Furthermore, it's just not a good fit for this version of the game's more competitive playstyle. It's a scenario designed to promote cooperation in a game where the players are still racing for loot and playing in an every hero for themselves kind of way. Perhaps the trial was introduced to try to move the game away from that idea of competition, and to recontextualize the campaign as something the heroes should play through as a team, but none of the rest of the campaign was adjusted accordingly. Mission rewards are still only given to individual heroes rather than being divided up. Heroes can still take items and prevent other heroes from having them, and the monsters all still have a single hit point, meaning if the heroes do team up, they are going to wreck shop with little that Morcar can do about it. Oh, and it gets worse, because the trial commits the worst sin of all. It doesn't define what the heroes are supposed to do. Here is the introductory text. You have learnt well, my friends. Now has come the time for your first trial. You are to travel east and enter the catacombs of Verag, a foul gargoyle. The catacombs guard the tomb of Felmarg. The trial is not easy, and some of you will not return. Those who do survive will continue their training. This is your first step on the road to becoming a hero. Tread carefully, my friends. So, what are we doing? Exploring the dungeon? Finding the tomb? Killing Felmarg? Killing Verag? It just doesn't say. So overall, I think this was a misstep, and with this edition, as with the North American edition, I think the Rescue of Sir Ragnar is a better starting point. It incorporates all elements of gameplay, including traps, treasure and spells, it has a clearly defined goal, and it's something the heroes can race for and compete against to see who can find Ragnar first. But still, we are not quite done, because obviously Avalon Hill eventually made a new edition of HeroQuest. It was a pretty faithful update of the original North American version of the game, and so of course the first quest in the book is the trial. Same quest, same issues. However, Avalon Hill eventually published a free online quest called New Beginnings. Like the trial, it serves as a showcase for the game. It's a large dungeon that uses almost every piece of furniture and features at least one of every type of enemy. It even has a special boss character and incorporates dread spells. It has traps, it has secret doors. It encourages cooperation, and it even has a little bit of flavor text for Zargon to read as heroes enter each new room. It is a really excellent introduction. It's not as difficult as the trial, it uses every element of gameplay, and it has useful information to help a new Zargon player learn how to be a good dungeon master. Avalon Hill also published another training mission called Rogar's Hall. In that quest, Mentor travels with the heroes and has some healing potions that he can dish out when the heroes die. It can be played as the first game in a campaign, or it can be slotted into a campaign straight after New Beginnings. I'll put links to these online quests in the video description below so you can check them out for yourself if you haven't already seen them. And so, at the end of all that, I would say that if you are playing the original European version of the game, start with the maze. It's the best example of how to play that edition. If you are playing a North American version of the game and you want to play a single game that showcases the system, or maybe you want to put new heroes through their paces, play the trial. But if you are starting a new campaign, it might be better to play New Beginnings, especially if you are playing with younger players or casual gamers. Then skip the trial and go straight on to the Rescue of Sir Ragnar. But of course, that's just my personal take. Let me know in the comments what you think, because that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone, bye bye.